The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, your host. And today we're going to be talking about estate sales and estates that have items in them that may be of interest to our listeners. On the line, I have Trinetta Sims-Rainey of Blue Moon Estate Sales. Trinetta, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Marcus, for having me.
So what is your origin story? How did you get involved in Blue Moon and estate sales in general?
How I got involved with Blue Moon, it's interesting enough that I say it like it fell in my lap. Is how I like to say my involvement with Blue Moon became about. As far as my origin story that kind of melded the two together is that personally, I just have this joy, this sense of accomplishment that I receive from organizing, just organizing spaces, taking an area that was previously in a disarray and just identifying new uses for current or common household items. That's just something I have a passion about doing and have for many years. And when it comes to an estate sale, there's this level of creativity that you get to employ when doing the different tasks to execute them. And in my past, I've organized pantries and basements and just utilizing those spaces more effectively. And where estate sales came in is I actually had a friend with a Blue Moon franchise, and she was looking for stagers. And I went to assist her in staging the home, which is that area of my passion of finding spaces and new places to place things. And ultimately, I enjoyed it so much till I felt that there was a need for one in my side of town, which would be the western suburbs. And that's pretty much where Blue Moon Estate Sales of Naperville came to be.
Terrific. Can you, first of all, can you give an example of something that can be reused in a house?
Oh, everything.
Just one little example so that we can envision what you're talking about.
So one example would be a dresser. So one example would be a dresser where you could take a dresser that's typically in a bedroom and you can actually bring that into your kitchen and now use that as another drawer space for pots and pans, food items, your towels, napkins. Actually, they truly have items called buffets that you can purchase to be this item. But if your decor is a certain way that a bedroom item could just easily move its way into your kitchen, that's cost savings to you.
So the light bulb just went on over my head. My sister, in her kitchen, has my parents' armoire. And that's their pantry. So as soon as you said that, it all just clicked with me. And the reason why it's in the kitchen is they couldn't fit it up the stairs at their house. So they made use of it, which is exactly what you're talking about. I thought it was a little odd at first, but then whatever. Okay, it's great. It's my parents' stuff. It's there. It reminds me of them. So can you explain the difference between downsizing and estate sales, and is there overlap between both of them?
Yes, and what I would start off by saying is downsizing in itself is one reason to have an estate sale. So if we look at downsizing as a sale on a smaller scale than an estate sale, then I can compare the two. And I'll just take that a little step further. When it comes to an estate sale, there's multiple reasons to have one. One is moving, transitioning into, say, a care facility or other life changes like divorce or death. Those are reasons why you would look towards an estate sale. And like I said, downsizing is one of those reasons. Now, if we say estate sale, is typically a full home. An estate sale is on a much larger scale. An estate sale typically is, these are items that had I had the space for it, it would be going with me, no matter where this new place is. If I had the space, I wouldn't leave anything behind. And when it comes to downsizing, you're purposefully identifying these particular items that you have no use for any longer, or it's not going to fit into where you're going. And sometimes what that real difference come into play becomes variety and value, is what I would like to say. Typically with the downsizing, the things of lesser value is what's going to remain. Those items of higher value, you're packing that up and taking it with you. When it comes to an estate sale, the value is all over the board. The value can be as high as a $10,000 piece of art, and as low as a roll of toilet paper, which is still desirable because we know how our paper shortage was a couple of years back. But that's where I would say the real difference come into, if we're looking at downsizing as a smaller scale sale, which also I would say variety is another one. So I said variety and value, where variety for an estate sale is literally everything from a screwdriver to a whole bedroom set to jewelry, where a downsizing may be missing a couple of categories when it comes to the variety of the items available for that sale.
So what's the difference between an estate sale? I think I know the difference, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What's the difference between an estate sale and a garage sale?
Well, once again, that's going to be back to more on value and size now. Okay. Because the garage sale literally is just one area, garage or front yard, driveway. That's it. Where it comes to the estate sale, you're touring the entire home, most cases basement, main level, second floor, and every now and then a third floor. And you really want to take your time when it comes to an estate sale because there's so many gems that you can miss out on. And typically with a garage sale, once again, when it comes to value, it's really those items that typically have no use for the family anymore and may have been used, fairly loved, we like to say. Very loved items are typically at garage sales. Not that you can't find great finds, it's also about time as well. Garage sales, because of the limited space, you're probably only going to be there 15 minutes, maybe, max. An estate sale, you want to have some time on your hands because you can spend a good hour, if not more, looking for that one little treasure that just jumps out at you.
So admittedly, I go to garage sales and estate sales, and I prefer going in the summertime or the spring or the fall, just because they're more common, I guess you could say. But with estate sales, if you're talking about someone who passed away, they don't wait till the summer. So there are estate sales all year round. Is there a busier time of the year for you?
For me personally, being in the Midwest, yes, there is a busier time. Also, it's really cyclical. So reason why I say that is as I think back over the last couple of years, November, December, even January, there was activity. If you check out a couple of websites, you can see companies all year round hosting estate sales. They do tend to get a little slower in our heavier winter months, and that's due to client need, desire, where most clients also want to make sure that their sale is very well attended. And because of that, if they have the ability to stretch it out a month or two, they will. As you just shared, when it comes to a death, unexpected, there really isn't always opportunity to do that, to have more control over the dates. But when you can, most definitely. No one's really trying to have too many estate sales in Chicago's winter.
Right. Okay. So this is me being very curious on this, like my hands are rubbing together. What sort of interesting finds have you discovered?
Interesting finds. Interesting finds is an interesting question. Weapons, of course. That is how you and I became acquainted, right? Definitely, we've seen World War II Bowie knives. We've come across other handguns, which we'll talk more about that as well. Something else we come across a lot, definitely the jewelry and power tools. And the reason why I say power tools is an interesting find is because personally, I'm a hammer and screwdriver kind of acquainted individual. And we've had sales that was, when I say some power tools, just in their garage, just in a workshop, from carpenters to engineers to mechanics, like really huge machinery that personally I had never seen before in real life or such. So that's been interesting. I know one of my team members even came across a family that had, it was actually some explosives. Ooh. So they had also went in to have that removed properly. So it's really, you have to be careful. One, we're in homes that some individuals aren't familiar with anymore because they've moved away. They're adult children, mm-hmm. and they're not aware of the different things that may have come into their parents' home. And so it is something that you have to be on alert when we're looking through the home for items. But overall, you get to a point where we do start to see some of the same items.
You mentioned handguns. I'm sure there's long guns as well. There's about 120 firearms for every 100 people in the United States. So what do you typically do when you encounter firearms or ammunition?
First thing we do is contact the family. First, we need to identify if they suspected that there would be potential weapons in the home or if they're surprised by the weapons being in the home. We've had situations where the family members were completely surprised. And in those instances, we have to consult with them about proper removal from the home. And the reason being is, if they have no connection to this weapon, meaning they have no history of the weapon, they can't produce papers, indicate there was legal possession of it, then there's, in my opinion, in our business model, there's nothing, we have no rights to do much with that versus contacting the police or just having that proper removal. In cases where homeowners are aware of the gun, then, and they can produce the right information, that's when we can make those decisions around would they want them a part of the sale versus holding on to the weapon. And I know we can talk more about the sale part because of new laws and things in Illinois now. But we really go through those steps of first making sure the family legally have the rights to this, firearm, especially if it's found, right? Yeah. So
that brings up some thoughts with me. There, a lot of times, is not paperwork on firearms, particularly if they were bought. And I'll give you an example. I work with a downsizer, and they found a firearm, and either it was the husbands who had passed away. Either the wife didn't know about it or also had memory issues, but the gun was made in 1918, 1919. So chances of 100-plus-year-old receipt just is very, very slim, and they didn't have any paperwork with the gun. How do you handle it in that situation? It's an antique. It's someone brought back from, Europe, Japan, World War II, even Vietnam War. How do you handle those?
Well, when it comes to antiques, there's ways that we're a part of what's called the American Society of Estate Liquidators.
Right.
And when it comes to antiques, we're able to tap into that network and really then confirm the legitimacy of the antique status. And in those cases, I want to say laws are different for antique firearms than they are for active.
Okay. For modern firearms.
Yes, modern use firearms.
Okay. What percentage of families keep firearms that you find?
I'm going to say I would say 40, it's a 40-60 split as I think over just the sales that we've been able to conduct there. I mean, I would say 1 in every 3.
Okay.
There's firearms, and that's why I say more on that 40-60 split, 40% being how often we come across firearms. And I mean, it's our Second Amendment right. So to come across that many firearms is not surprising. In some cases, you would expect it to be higher. But I also will add, I know in other cases they have kept their firearms, and they were not a part of the sale, and they were not hidden in a closet. So
Right.
So yeah, I'm sure the percentage is higher. We just have several that truly keep their firearms.
Okay. Fair enough. I can certainly see that. You know, it's very interesting to me, and I'm in a different little kind of my own little world as opposed to your world, and I have seen an extreme uptick in gun ownership of people who never thought they would own a firearm ever. I had lunch with a networking contact yesterday, and he told me, we were talking about doing keynote speaking, and that's one of the things that I do now. And he wanted to get into it, so I was like, "Hey, let's go to lunch." Now he told me, if this was 2 years ago, I never even would have given you the time of day, because there's a little bit of a misperception of people that work in conservative political areas. Guns are out there, so I teach people how to be safe with them. That's a fact, and that's it. That's my, I'm making air quotes with my fingers, but that's my political agenda, to make people safe. They exist. Let's go take care of it and make sure nobody gets hurt. But it's interesting. You may encounter more and more as time goes on and as things in the world unfold. What has prompted the last couple months is actually the war in Israel. I've gotten, for example, in December, I usually don't do classes in December. I usually do one class in November. And in November, I had 4 classes, and in December, I had another 4 classes. So people are now seeing that, ooh, you know, maybe the police aren't going to help me, or they're more occupied, and I'm not making a judgment here, but they're more occupied with helping the migrants and policing them and giving them social services, that when there's a real emergency, there's a delay, particularly in the city of Chicago, not so much the suburbs, but people are realizing, oh my goodness, well, maybe I ought to get candles, maybe I ought to get extra batteries. And it's very interesting. I see society evolving into becoming a little bit more self-sufficient and not relying on the government to help us, protect us, etc. And I'm making a little joke here, and the joke comes from, I did work for a fire department. That's why I have a fire extinguisher. Not that the fire department's not going to respond to my house in an emergency, but at the same time, there could be an emergency somewhere else, an apartment building on fire. I've got an issue. There's a delayed response from the fire department. Not their fault. They're helping other people. They're occupied. And I don't mean occupied by making shrimp scampi at the firehouse. I mean, they're occupied by actually helping other people. So I'm a big believer in being self-sufficient. So I did mention that I attend estate and garage sales, and I've gotten my wife into it. And can you offer any tips and tricks to shoppers who are going to estate sales?
Oh, yes, absolutely. When it comes to attending an estate sale, I think the first tip I would like to offer is just around having a budget. And that's just so that you have a base for looking out for what you can afford to spend that day. Because it can be overwhelming. And as soon as you walk through the door, you can see that vase that you're just like, oh my gosh, I gotta have it. And before you're out that house, I mean, your arms are full. So definitely starting out with a budget. The second tip I would say is actually familiarize yourself with some of the current retail prices of items. And I say that so that you notice what's a good deal, so that you don't walk past it and turn around to only see someone else grab it because you've really walked away from, I don't know, say a Keurig that was $20. And it's because you're thinking you can get one less than that. You know, it's like, if it's a nice digital one for 20, let's grab that.
Yeah.
You know, so familiarize yourself with some of the current retail prices of items. And I would offer a third one of make a list, and it could be a mental list. It could just be in your phone, but just of a few things in your home that you are looking to purchase within the next couple of weeks or so. Just kind of have that little tickler for yourself. Maybe there's a wall in your home that you're looking to put a piece of art on. Maybe you just moved in somewhere, especially, first time home buyers, and you're really looking to furnish up your home, and just have that little list. I remember we always wanted an entryway table, just a little small table by the front door to sit our keys. And we found one, works perfectly. And then we found a little glass jar that we could put the keys in, So it's just having in your mind those little lists. A little list for yourself. And then that little small last one I would say is make sure you have some time. I would say that's a good tip is when you're going to stop an estate sale, it's tempting to stop and you have just only 15 minutes to spare. Very tempting to stop. And I'm not telling you not to. I'm just saying the wisest opportunity is when you do have some time to really walk through the home. And it's just because it's so much there to see. And I would hate for you to miss out on that one treasure that was truly waiting for you.
So this is all good advice. I've actually looked up values on my phone while I was at an estate sale and found some were great deals and some were not so great deals. So how do you price the variety of objects that are in the house?
When it comes to pricing, there's a combination of steps that we use for pricing. One, yes, we also are going to look up things on our phone, mostly because that's exactly what the shoppers are going to do. So we do want to make sure that we're being competitive there. And it's just like that first, one or two hits that may come up online. But really what we do from a, like I said, full process standpoint is we're looking at the items in the home. We're looking at the condition of the items in the home when it comes to pricing. We're looking at it being from excellent to good condition, because we want to make sure that, one, we're showing this home in its best light, these possessions in its best light. And we really want to make sure that individuals are getting a good deal, good value for their money. We're also looking at the season. Like, what season is this? Is this a hot item people are looking for right now? I mean, similar to a retail store, they're going to have certain items. A grill may not be priced as high in the winter as it would be the summer. But we are looking at the seasonality of the items as well. And we also utilize past sales to determine what items have been selling for, what's been moving quickly, what items have really sat till the last day, or what items never moved. So we're looking at all of that to determine pricing. And then we are truly then looking at what something like this priced out at originally and currently. So we are looking at if you really can still find this, because when it comes to the estate sale, there's items that you cannot find anywhere else in this home. And those items we really then have to, once again, we go back to ASO, as I mentioned before. We work with the family themselves, and we do have some subscription services that allow us to find items that are rare and get some comps for them.
Okay, that makes sense. Some of the ones, and we're in kind of different parts of the Chicago area, but some of the estate sales that I go to, depending on the company that's running it, I know they're high or I know that they're reasonable. So it's very interesting. There's some items out there that are just, I asked the question because they're astronomically priced ridiculously. And then there's a gimmick I want to ask you about. There's been estates. What? I'm sorry?
I said,
No, it's just a couple companies do this. It's like everything is 50% off. And I think that's a gimmick. What do you think?
I think it's a strategy.
Okay, strategy's better, nicer word than I used.
And the strategy is really the main goal of the estate sale. Ultimately, the goal of the estate sale is to clear this home, to rehome these possessions, to keep them out of the landfills, to help our planet. For those individuals that have that passion of being green, we talked about that reusing. of items. So when you think of that piece of the goal of the estate sale, that's where 50% off becomes a strategy, where we're saying, hey, we've had these items in this home day 1, day 2, day 3, however many days this estate sale has run. And we're at the point where we're saying, due to condition, desirability, season, just all these different elements as to why this particular item hasn't sold from this particular home, this particular sale, we need to mark this down. Okay. And, we're just going to make everything 50% off, make it easier for the shopper to calculate what their price is going to be, make it easier for our cashier to get them out the door faster. So that's where that 50% off comes in. It's really, at this point, the strategy is clear this home out, and we want to do it in the best way possible for the family as well as the shoppers.
Interesting, yeah. So my perspective just changed. I asked you the question from the perspective of a buyer, and you gave me the behind the scenes look, which is perfect. It's exactly what I wanted to know, why companies do that.
And if I could add something else about, because I don't want it to be where a person believes, oh, go 50% off day. And it's like, no, you still want to go day 1, be one of the first 10 people in line, because the value is there, and there's some really nice items that's going to be at that sale. And guess what? The reason why they're able to make it to a 50% off day is because all that great stuff went day 1, So just want to make sure individuals don't just hold out for a 50% off day.
I found that to be the case. One of the things I do is collect silver coins and bars. And if I go day 2, there's nothing. If they advertise they have coins, and some of the websites have pictures, I'm like, ooh, that looks good. And you show up and they're gone. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back to continue the conversation with Trinita Sims-Rainey of Blue Moon Estates in Naperville. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.